Paul, I got to tell you, I'm really proud of us. Really proud of us.
You and I, us.
Us. So,
Wow, what have we done?
oh, yeah, exactly. Just wait. So, as you may have been aware, you may not have noticed, but I was on vacation last week. It was a great
I
time.
did notice. Yeah,
It was a beautiful time, wonderful time.
yeah.
I'm already missing the over sugary drink. But anyway, so I didn't read a lot of I mean, I read a book. Didn't stayed off the internet for the most part or whatever.
Okay.
And
This
so
so
my
far sounds like a victory for you, not us. But go on.
So anyway, so my plan was on the way home, on the flight home, I was going to watch Apple WWDC. I was able to rip it and download it
Oh, yeah, yeah.
because it's like for flying home is a whole different thing. Allegiant is a whole different experience. Anyway, so it was like a 3.5 hour, 4 hour flight. Like this thing is like 2 hours and some change or whatever. I'm like, this is perfect. This is perfect. So I watched this whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. It's whatever. But I came away with one thing and one thing only that they announced at WWDC, and I was like, I bet Paul wrote about this because this fascinates me.
Okay.
They announced APIs,
Yeah. Right.
and then you go look at like what Microsoft did, and it's like, what? Like,
It was very clear to me that someone said, we've gotten a lot of criticism for doing like a PR stunt at the beginning of WWC every year. Let's at least mention APIs every single time there is something. Because I'm sure they released APIs at every WWDC, but
I'm sure.
it just seemed like it was notable to me. It just seemed so overt how often they talked about APIs.
Yeah, and then here we are in the Windows camp going like, well, the funniest thing was.
I mean,
So Microsoft, I think, was it last week they did these awards for like the App Store and all that stuff?
Yeah.
And like almost most of the apps that were worth anything that got awards all used undocumented APIs because that's the only way you can build anything like for Windows is you got
That's
to
funny. Yeah.
scrap around.
I'm actually I worked on this a little bit over the weekend to see if it made sense. I might write a little, it's not even a series. I might just do like instead of like big programming projects, which I still will do some of, I might write little articles just about specific little things. Like there's a thing in the .NET and WinRT world called pinvoke, and it's a way to call a subset of the Win32 APIs. And it's not undocumented, but it's like it's just like a curiosity kind of thing. Well, probably not to real developers, but I feel like there's all this stuff out in the world that people just don't know about. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
APIs. Yeah, maybe I'll call it API Gate.
API gate.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. And by the way, on a semi-related note, the UK Competition Commission, whatever the name of that thing is, late last week, came out with a freaking huge report about Apple and Google's mobile ecosystems, specifically the app stores, and how they abuse competitors and partners and developers and customers through their business policies. And it is. I haven't read anything this well. No, that's not true. The Epic v. Apple stuff has generated some pretty good documentation that's interesting to read. But I mean, really, you have to kind of go back to Microsoft antitrust, especially the U.S. case, but I guess also the EU case. But they just really lay it out like this is how the market works. This is what the different strategies are. These are how they're similar. It's really lengthy and detailed. But buried in there, I'm going to write about this morning, is the reason Apple banned Xbox Cloud Gaming from its devices. And it's well, nuanced is not the right word. I think most people would look at that and say, Apple's making a services play. They want to charge per game because that's how they generate money. Like, in other words, otherwise all they can do is charge off of the subscription price, but only if someone started it on their device. And they make this really specious argument about how games are somehow different than video. So Netflix is okay. We don't have to do that for Netflix, but we do have to do it for games. But there's another reason. Actually, there's two more reasons. It's not just that. That's actually absolutely part of it. But another part of it is that when you look at App Store revenue, 97% of it, or some crazy high number, it comes from games. It's like in-app game purchases. And that's part of it, because that's the real services play there. That's where they make all their money, is from games on the App Store. But there's another part of it. And the other part of it is that Apple really only competes in the premium part of the smartphone market. Their business model is primarily device based, especially the iPhone, right, which is like 68% of the revenues or whatever. If you add up all their hardware, it's probably 80 something percent of their revenues. So it's really the way they differentiate themselves in the market is by having the best chips in the world. They make a huge point of that. Super powerful graphics, metal, all that stuff. And it's like, if you want to do mobile gaming, you want to be on an iPhone because that's where it's awesome. And I guess unless you're a Fortnite player, but that's their strategy. Like the hardware is what's selling. If you take a service that lets you play Xbox One quality or Xbox Series X quality games on any device, you've just done in gaming to the iPhone what web apps or any other least common denominator thing does. You've ruined the point of having an iPhone. Like, you're chipping away at the reasons that people buy these things. So if you add this stuff, like, why don't they support PWAs? Why don't they support cloud gaming? It's all the same thing. It's like you're devaluing this awesome hardware that they make, which is how they make all their money. It's a long thing to get through to come to this point that I just said. But like I said, I'll write it up so no one has to read the whole thing. But it is, when you read this, you're like, right. Like, of course. And a lot of things sound like that. Like, a lot of things sound like they make sense. But I think those three things together collectively, and there's even internal emails, by the way. This is not like conjecture. Craig Federini, or whatever that guy's name is, literally says what I just said in an email, the third point. He makes that case. Like, we need to figure out a way not to have this thing on our store because it's devaluing our hardware.
Interesting.
Yeah. A little Apple heavy morning this morning, somehow, a week after WWDC.
Yeah. Well, there was an Xbox showcase yesterday.
Yeah, slightly less interesting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Starfield. That is by far the most interesting upcoming game out there. At least, like, the big titles coming from Microsoft. And they showed off quite a bit of it, and my hope for it is still pretty high. So...
Yeah. No, but I hear Bethesda, and I think, oh man, we're gonna get like a new Wolfenstein. We're gonna, and it was really kind of soft on that stuff. Like, a bunch of little things, like the new Forza Horizon, I think, right? Forza Horizon, probably.
Well, there was the Forza next gen game, but then there was also the Horizon Hot Wheels expansion.
The Hot Wheels thing. That's right. Okay, right. I'm confusing those two. That's always, and then there's some flight simulator stuff that I thought you could drive, like the one of the Halo space vehicles. It's actually kind of cool.
Which I will tell you, the flight sim Top Gun sort of crossover.
Yeah.
I play that all the time. It's just like little simulations you can do.
Yeah, that's.
But
cool.
It's it's got the music playing. You got to land on a carrier.
The movie is kind of before your time in a sense, that you would have been just born, or.
Oh, don't worry, Paul. My parents had that video on VHS, and I wore out the VHS watching it so much.
So my wife and I watched it this past weekend in anticipation of going to see the new one in the theater because it's gotten really good reviews, and it's the type of movie that might make sense in a theater. Yeah. And listen, I was a teenager in the 80s, so the 80s are everything to me. This movie is a steaming pile of crap. Like, it is. There are 3 songs on infinite repeat in this movie. It's only 3 songs over and over and over. The dialogue is horrific. The action sequences are impossible to decide. You have no idea what's going on. It's like, look, is this guy's claim to fame that he can put the brakes on and then appear behind the guy who was shooting at him? That's the whole strategy? Like, no one has figured that out as a tactic?
Well, I haven't seen the movie, and I'm not going to see it until I can do it in my own basement. Missile technology has changed slightly since the 80s. Like,
you think?
Like, dogfighting isn't really a thing anymore.
I know, it's really like hold the stick. It's like the red thing goes green, or red. I guess it's green goes red, whatever. And it's like boop, boop, boop. It's like, I got him. You're like, oh, that's really exciting. What just happened? What am I watching? What is this crazy?
Yeah, I'm sure now you're just flying like this, and the AI goes, "Do you want to destroy the plane?" You're like, "Yep." Boop, boop.
He's playing Tetris on his phone.
Yep. I mean, there's a little e-ink thing on the side of the plane that says, "Look, Ace, like, you got to kill." Like, that's where we're at.
You got achievement unlocked. Comes up.
So I always tell my wife that I get screwed over when flying. Doesn't matter. I hate flying. I always get screwed over. It doesn't matter what happens. So here's how I got screwed over twice by Allegiant. First off, Allegiant, not known for on time.
I mean, that sentence, by the way, is self-completing. You could like how I got screwed over by Allegiant could end in like 117 different ways.
Well, the first one wasn't their fault. So first off, flying down, we were an hour delayed because they didn't have enough gate agent. Like, if you look at this flight, it is an hour delayed every single time it is taken off because they don't have enough people there to process. Whatever, that's fine. So you're thinking, oh well, you're an hour delayed. That's not screwed over. Well, here's how I got screwed over. You look at the weather in Cincinnati, gorgeous. You look at the weather in Punta Cana when we're flying, gorgeous. What was in between us and Punta Cana? A tropical storm. Let me tell you how much fun that is to deal with when you don't like flying.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, there was that tropical storm last week.
How's your kid in the plane? Is she okay with this kind of thing?
Freak out? So I got to get the story on that one. Anyway, so that was screw number one. I guess screw 1.5, where you had to get a COVID test to come home. Like if you tested positive.
By the way, that's
I am in line waiting to get stabbed in the nose. And let me tell you, these people, this is great. Stabbed in the nose. And when I read on Twitter, breaking news, starting on Sunday, you no longer need a negative COVID test. We're flying home on Saturday. Chip, true.
Last day. Well, did they give you a little trophy or something? Like,
well,
a golden swab you could put up on your mantle like a sword.
The three of us go into this private room or whatever, and they're going to do the nose swab thing. And like these people didn't give a shit.
In a hotel or what?
Yeah, it was at the resort, and like they go up the nose, and like so my wife was just trying to keep it together, and I'm like, it couldn't be that bad. I'm like, oh God.
I feel like I'm extra sensitive up there. It is the most invasive thing to me.
And so my 9-year-old sitting there watching us get it done. Like, we can't lose it because she's not going to.
Yeah, you're squirming and everything. And
and so like they do it to her, and of course tears start flowing or whatever. But anyways, so we get on the plane to fly home. I am not making it up. There's 2 Allegiant planes side by side. And of course, we're an hour behind because the plane coming in was an hour late. Whatever, fine. We knew that. Figure, whatever. Get on the plane. Mind you, we're in Punta Cana. It is 9 trillion degrees.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, so we got to do some paperwork. I'm like, oh, Christ, here we go. So I'm not making this up. Somehow, they lost a life preserver on this plane. They did not have one. They were missing one for a seat. One. Now, Paul, conveniently, I'm not making this up, there was another Allegiant plane sitting next to us, and they said, look, the plane next to us can give us the life preserver so we can put it on the plane.
What, do you think, open the window and hand it over?
So that we can fill the seats that were needed and we can take off. However, they need an oxygen bottle. So we're going to we traded an oxygen bottle for a life preserver on the tarmac in Punta Cana. Guess how long that takes, Paul? Guess how long that took?
Well, based on how much time it took them to gas up a plane, I'm going to say about an hour.
It was an hour and a half.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Hearing that over the intercom, I would have leaned into my wife and said, I don't care how much it costs. This is the last time we're ever flying on this airline.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that would have been the end of it.
The seats did not recline. They were not comfortable. So it's not like we were paying for a premium comfort here. Like we're sitting on.
I know, but that's the
sheet metal.
Come on. Yeah, but you're not riding a burro. Like you expect a certain level of.
I know, humanity. The great part was, so my daughter got on the plane and she's watching, like, we had shows lined up. She had an iPad, and one show was 90 minutes long. It was a movie. She watched the whole thing. Never looked up. And then
did she look up? And
she looked up, and I am not even joking. She yelled and goes, "We're still here!" And like half the plane started laughing, like right around us, because she looked out like we're not even moving. It's,
yeah. I mean,
whatever. We made it there. We made it back.
When we went to Mexico on that last trip to buy the place, we had so many things that had gone wrong, so many things, and we were landing, and the guy said, "Look, just to let you know, there's a big thunderstorm. It's going to get bumpy." And sure enough, we're going up and down. It's raining. Rain's hitting the plane. I'm like, whatever. And I just put my iPad on. I had the noise canceling headphones. I'm watching a movie or a TV show. I don't remember what it was. And it's, 10, 15 minutes goes by, whatever. And my wife like elbows me, and I'm like, what? And she goes, didn't you hear what they just said? I'm like, no. She's like, we're not landing. I'm like, what are you talking about? We were just landing. She's like, we're diverting to another airport. And this is bad because we have to be someplace in the morning to sign everything. And it's, instead of getting in at 9:30, we got in at like 12:30 a.m.
Yeah.
It was awful. We went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. We had to be somewhere at 8. Anyway, I'm like, after I get over the initial shock of this, I didn't understand why, because we were landing. Like I said, we literally were landing. And I was like, I leaned into my wife and I was like, how many signs from God do we have to have before we realize we're not supposed to be doing this? I'm like, what what else could go wrong? You know?
Yep.
I don't know.
Anyways, here we are. We're back. Ish. It's a Monday.
Yeah.